controversial opinion, I think spaghetti's pointless. Spaghetti is like, you know how dogs have like slow feeders so that they don't eat too quick? Spaghetti is just that for humans. Just don't know what a meatloaf. I just don't know what a meatloaf is. Like, I've seen it in movies, but no recipe. Yeah, I've seen like Babish make a meatloaf, but as far as I could tell, that was just basically like mincemeat and then some breadcrumbs all jammed into it. It looked good, but it just kind of confused me. Maybe here doesn't translate to meatloaf. I mean, we don't really, not really a thing in England. I've never seen it advertised anywhere. I've never eaten it. Fuck it, you know what? We're doing it. This is what we're doing. Today's segment of how are we going to do something that isn't the actual game. Basics with Babish. Basics as well, not even like binging.
This episode is sponsored by ButcherBox. With ButcherBox, you can get high-quality meat delivered directly to your door.
I don't know if that's stupidly loud for you. No.
Grass-fed beef, free-range organic chicken.
This is what we're doing. We're watching Meatloaf.
Pork and wild-caught seafood sourced from farmers and fishermen dedicated to doing the right thing. For a limited time, new members will get 6 free steaks. That's 2 ribeyes and 4 top sirloins, plus $10 off their first box. Go to the link in the video description for more info.
Louder? How's that? That should be better. That should be nice. Be alright? I mean, obviously he's not saying anything.
Just like Meatballs, any great meatloaf starts with a panade, a mixture of milk and seasoned breadcrumbs that helps give the meatloaf structure and keep it moist. Plus, I like to add 1 teaspoon of garlic powder to my 5 ounces of breadcrumbs and 6 ounces of milk. Once we got ourselves a nice milky, bready paste, it's time to add vegetables. And so we don't end up with large, crunchy chunks, I like to grate mine on the large holes of a box grater.
I'm already confused.
And 1 medium rib of celery. Plus, I've got half a small onion here, which you could
small
as well, but it's going to have a stronger.
That's not a small onion.
Then I also like to add a 1/4 cup of tomato paste, 1.5 teaspoons of Worcestershire sauce for that nice flavor, a 1/4 cup of finely chopped parsley, and 2 large eggs thoroughly beaten with a fork or, of course, a tiny whisk. And then it's super not traditional, but I like to add 1/8 cup of finely chopped fresh basil. Does this make it
don't use
more like a
veggies
giant
in
meatball?
I mean, if it's got mince in it, then yeah.
Problem for me? No.
Hang on, what was that?
And then it's super not traditional, but I like to add 1/8 cup of finely chopped fresh basil.
Yeah, basil.
Does this make it more like a giant meatball than a
basil?
Meatloaf? Kinda. Is that a problem?
No, it's just a giant meatball?
So seasoning with a teaspoon of kosher salt and 1.5 teaspoons of freshly ground black pepper. Then we're mixing until evenly combined, mixing this together before adding the meat.
I was gonna say, well, that's just not meat so far, so that's just a
helps evenly distribute
stew.
all the spices and flavors.
Put water in it, that's basically a stew.
Throw on some gloves if you're a wimp like me and knead everything together. Once the beautifully flavored panade is evenly distributed throughout the meat, we're ready to form and bake, which we're going to do in a generously greased loaf pan, but not in the way that you might be thinking. We're going to take some pages
I could make this.
G. Lopez and Alton Brown's books, pack it tightly into our loaf pan, and then invert
I've got a loaf pan
onto
downstairs.
a quarter sheet that I mistakenly lined with parchment paper. You don't
Nicole
want to do
has
that.
a loaf pan
You'll see
downstairs that I
why
will steal.
Momentarily. We're knocking the meatloaf out of the loaf pan and baking it free.
That just doesn't look
in a
appetizing.
350
I'm sorry, it
degree
doesn't.
Fahrenheit oven. While that bakes for its first 15-minute stint, we're going to make a sort of glaze. 4 ounces of tomato paste, 1 tablespoon of honey, 1 tablespoon tomato paste, a teaspoon of Worcestershire sauce, a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar, and 1/3 cup of brown sugar. We're also going to add a few generous twists of freshly ground black pepper. This is going to form the gooey caramelized layer on the outside of our meatloaf as we brush it down every 15 minutes during its 45 minutes to 1 hour in the oven. Baking the meatloaf standing on its own 2 feet like this allows it to brown the oven, giving us deeper, roastier flavors thanks to the Maillard reaction. It also allows us to layer on our glaze the same way that we would on ribs, giving us lacquered.
So, like, this is what I mean. That just looks to me like mincemeat that you've taken, like a kilogram of mince that you just buy in a shop, and then just some veg just pushed into the side of it. Like, that's all that looks like to me. But obviously then you've just squished it all together so you don't have the gaps in mince. But, like, that's just what it is, and then with some sauce on the top.
We're just going to brush it down twice every 15 minutes for the first 30 minutes and then let it finish baking for another 20 to 25 minutes until it reaches an internal
I mean, I'm not saying I wouldn't eat it.
55 degrees Fahrenheit.
It looks good.
Yes, that is not what the USDA recommends, but it's going to give you a much juicier meatloaf. Once it is finished with its final bit of oven lovin', I'm going to take it off the pan and put it onto my intended serving platter and admire all the grease in the bottom of my pan. This is grease that your meatloaf would normally be swimming in, making it
Immediately.
Then it's time to remove the parchment paper, which is when I discovered my fatal mistake. Turns out that parchment paper cannot handle all the moisture of this loaf, and it dissolves much like my confidence when shooting an episode about meatloaf.
Nah, tinfoil, you'll be fine.
For 10 minutes, it's time to slice and serve. And for a super basic, pretty quick meatloaf.
Our version is more of a meat roll, minced meat, onion, spices, breadcrumbs, egg, then roll it with bacon. Ooh.
This one is really tasty. The glaze is sweet and sticky and tangy. The meat
it does look good. I can't say it doesn't look good, but it does.
But with this first loaf, I've learned...
I'm sorry, but look at it. It's just a meatball. It's just like a bougie meatball. Like a big bougie meatball. That's just when you can't be... That's like more steps when you can't be bothered to make a bolognese. Like, I don't want bolognese for dinner, but I want something that's basically bolognese, and you make that. Which is just a really big meatball.
Moist and flavorful, and, well, that's really all there is to a meatloaf. But with this first loaf, I've learned a lot, and there's definitely some things that I want to experiment with. Perhaps most importantly...
Can't say I'm moaning about it. It does look good.
Paper,
I would eat the hell out of that.
But also other stuff, like grinding our own meats and making our own meatloaf mix. The classic formula for which calls for beef, pork, and veal. But I want to switch things up a little bit, so instead of veal, I'm going to use a boneless leg of lamb.
What do we eat on cheese? Far superior.
Gamey, I love cheese.
Even though I'm lactose intolerant, God, I love cheese.
Remove any silver skin or connective tissue, anything that your knife has kind of a hard time cutting through. If your knife has a hard time cutting through it, so will your teeth. Once we've removed the chewy stuff and the excess fat, we're cutting the meat down into 1-inch cubes, which we're going to spread out evenly on parchment-lined baking sheets and plop in the freezer. Where our meat grinder parts have been hanging out for the last half hour, or until very, very frozen. The colder everything is, the easier it's going to grind, the less fat is going to smear, and the less cleanup you'll have to do. We're grinding everything on a medium plate because we don't want too many big chunks of meat in our meatloaf, and I'm grinding all the meats separately so I have control over how
I always watch these bits of like, here's the better way to do it with grinding your own meat. I'm never ever gonna. I would make the first one.
Which I think should give us
the first one I would make, but I'm never gonna grind my own meat. It's never gonna happen.
Down a little bit and add stock that's been gelatinized. If you have homemade stock that sets up like Jell-O in the fridge, you can skip this step. Otherwise, grab yourself a half cup of store-bought stock and evenly sprinkle a packet of unflavored gelatin over top, mixing occasionally.
You're just making jelly but without a stock, and that's weird to me.
And to both deeply flavor our vegetables and make them soft.
Maybe I'll make meatloaf on stream one day. Maybe I will just have like. I was gonna turn Fridays because obviously I was gonna do a just chat. Maybe I'll just turn it into like a cooking stream.
Grated carrots and celery for 3 to 5 minutes.
Because I always end up cooking and eating before I end up streaming. It just means I'll start earlier. That's the worst thing I've seen in a while.
Simmer together until the stock is cooked down by about 50%.
Why did you then have to?
A couple cloves of fresh garlic, let that cook for
why did you let it turn into a jelly when you were just going to pour it in?
We need to let it cool completely. So spreading it out on a sheet pan is going to make it cool a whole lot faster. While that cools, we can make our panade. But we're not going to use store-bought bread.
I bet I'm dead in WoW. I bet something's come over and bonked me.
Into a food processor.
If you can choose the piece of meat and watch the
bread, and this is totally optional, but a 1/4 ounce of dried porcini mushrooms, which
yeah, I mean,
pack an umami punch.
You never know what's really in it, but
fine breadcrumbs and process.
I'd still rather be lazy and do that.
I'm starting to think this is a job for a high-powered
need solid before you put it in the pan. Why?
Replacing this stuff.
Why would you not just pour it in?
Blender and processing until fine, trying not to breathe in that stinky mushroom dust. Don't worry, this is going to taste a lot better than it smells. Then I'm making a double batch of meatloaf, so I need a big old bowl. But I'm still going to narrate the amounts for a single batch, so don't pay attention that I'm breaking 4 eggs into this bowl. You're going to break 2 eggs into a bowl, which we're going to tiny whisk together with 4 ounces of buttermilk.
I mean, at that point, you use a normal whisk. Come on.
1 teaspoon of Worcestershire sauce and 1 teaspoon of fish sauce. Again, something that smells gnarly now, but is going to taste great later. Then we got our 1/4 cup of tomato paste, 1/8 cup of fresh basil, 1/4 cup of parsley, and our 5 ounces of homemade porcini mushroom breadcrumbs. Then we're going to add all of our sautéed and cooled vegetables.
I just don't get why you have to
gelatinized stock and
mix
browning
butter before you
for the
browning butter before you remelt butter.
Then we are adding our bespoke meatloaf mix, our teaspoon salt and 1.5 teaspoons of freshly ground black pepper, and then I'm really going to knead the hell out of this. My instinct is to keep this mixture loose like a burger so it stays tender, but we really need to work this mixture so it has good structure and doesn't
That is hella pink.
After all, they say don't overwork a burger, otherwise it'll end up like meatloaf, but we're actually making meatloaf here, so that's what we actually want. As soon as you're done with whatever it is that I'm doing,
that's a very interesting action to then flatten it.
This time I'm going to pack
I don't really know what the point was, but okay.
The bottom of the loaf pan to ensure that there are no gaps, piling the rest of the meat on top and pressing
Did you oil it
before
first?
Inverting onto, this time, a heavily greased piece of aluminum foil. I simply cannot stress how important that this is. Our glaze is staying the same because it is perfect and flawless and requires no recompense, as is our baking technique. 15 minutes freestanding in a 350-degree Fahrenheit oven, glaze thoroughly, and
that already looks
15 additional
fantastic.
Minutes in the oven.
That already does look better. I'll give it that. But it does just look like a giant.
And then another 20 to 25 minutes in the oven.
But it's kind of like a meat brick.
For 10 minutes before removing, slicing, and
I guess that's the point.
Now, this meatloaf has a
that does look okay. Yeah, that does look really good.
While grinding your own meat certainly gives you more control.
Yeah, I would absolutely demolish that.
I think the real secret lies in all the flavors and umami boosters. But
good, very good.
So to speak, is the form factor. I propose that you make mini meatloaves using the same method but with smaller loaf pans.
I'm kind of interested in it. I think I'll try it.
Full 10 minutes faster and are much more maneuverable and less unwieldy.
I might try and make one at some point because they do look interesting, but giant meatball.
They've got the same.
Well, what's to go wrong with a giant meatball? It's the thing you always eat first.
And let's face it,
you get pasta, you don't eat the pasta first. You eat the meatball first.
Tiny whisk. But no matter the size of the meatloaf, all these recipes are going to turn out absolutely delicious.
You definitely have leftovers too.
Recipe as a list of optional upgrades. You can add any one of them to your existing favorite meatloaf recipe to make them true members of the Clean Plate Club. Thank you again to ButcherBox for sponsoring.
I'm on board with it. Yeah.
ButcherBox is a game changer for home-cooked meals.
Oh yeah. I might try it. I might try and make some meatloaf at some point. Inspired. I don't imagine it'll go well, but I'll do it. Never had a meatball I enjoy. Not sure if I don't like it or if no one knows how to do it here. How do you not enjoy meatballs? Meatballs are just balls of meat. I don't know how you can't like a meat. How you can? I don't know how you can not like a meatball. Meatballs are fantastic. You know what you need to do if you don't like meatballs? You just get yourself over to IKEA. Have some Swedish meatballs that totally aren't Swedish meatballs, but are in a Swedish shop, so therefore are Swedish meatballs. Oh yeah. You've had them? How can you not like... Oh, I'm blown away. I'm blown away. I don't know how you can't, like, not enjoy meatballs. Meatballs are fantastic. Meatballs are the better alternative. I will always say that meatballs are better than bolognese because I can eat just meat. Like, bolognese is great, but it's kind of like, if you... I have to have pasta with it. I don't have spaghetti bolognese. Controversial opinion, I think spaghetti's pointless. As a food medium, spaghetti is just annoying. It's slow, it's annoying, it takes ages to get your way through. If you get like, is it tagliatelle? Where it's basically the same as spaghetti, but it's like flat and like has like a longer surface. That stuff, fantastic. Plenty, it's like a great vessel for sauce. You can get loads of sauce all over it, you can get loads of pasta in it. If you want to eat it, you can eat it. And it will actually get eaten quick. But spaghetti just takes ages. There's just so much faff. It takes so long. I'm that guy that only eats certain types of pasta because other types of pasta are harder to get a fork into. Like, I know it's like next level like laziness, but some types of pasta just take ages to put your fork into. If you've seen Italians cooking, they will tell you different dishes need different types of pasta. Yes. I understand that, but just in general, spaghetti... I just don't see the point. I don't go out my way to buy spaghetti. I will go out my way to buy a bag of pasta, but I won't do it for spaghetti. Spaghetti is great. It's not. Bolognese is great. Spaghetti is just stringy pasta. Spaghetti is just pasta with more effort. Spaghetti is like, you know how dogs have like slow feeders so that they don't eat too quick? Spaghetti is just that for humans. It's just to slow you down from eating too quick so you don't get hiccups. You know carbonara? Love carbonara. Pasta carbonara. Typically made with flat pasta, yeah. Then you get, like, I'm a big fan of carbonara, and then you put it in pasta, and then you get loads of sauce. Like, I'm just a big sauce to pasta ratio kind of person. I'm just not involved with it. Not on board with that, though. Do I need that one? No. Because spaghetti is supposed to go with lighter sauces. I mean, I get it, and I understand that there are certain sauces that go better with certain pastas and everything, but at the end of the day, it's just a faff to eat spaghetti as a whole. Nah, not for me. It's just too much effort. It's so much easier. Also, I would say tomato isn't a light sauce. Depends on the tomato sauce. Some of it's a bit. Oh, down. Tomato Italian style is very light compared to other sauces. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, as I say, I like pasta. Pasta is good. Bolognese is good. Tomato sauces are great. I just don't see the point in spaghetti. I think it's just a bit of a daft medium in which to transport sauce. When, like, you can have other versions of it, which is like, what's the flat spaghetti? What's it called? Is it tagliatelle? Yeah, tagliatelle. Is it taglia? I don't know how you even say it. I'm gonna commit to tagliatelle. Tagliatelle is the pinnacle of like of mediums in which to get sauce into your face. That's the best version of pasta and spaghetti is tagliatelle. Because it's the best of both worlds. It's nice and flat and you get loads of sauce on it. It's great. I had to give up one and keep the other. Spaghetti's out the door and that's staying in. That I can understand the obsession with. Right, can you go away so I can attack him? Thank you. I'm very considerate. Where's this extra damage coming from? Like doing 3 hits and I don't really... What happened there? I like this sword a lot. It's a really decent sword. I think you're confusing it with fettuccine. No, tagliatelle. I googled it. It's just flat spaghetti. Hang on, let me look up fettuccine. Okay, I'll be completely frank with you. I don't really see that big of a difference. Like, let's compare. Fettuccine Alfredo. Tagliatelle. If we're being honest, I don't really see a difference here. You know? They look pretty much the same. Fettuccine has egg. Okay. They're basically still the same vessel, is what I'm saying. Because at the end of the day, all it is a method in which to get sauce into your face. And they both have basically the same build, just one has egg. Pasta is not a vessel for food. It is, it's a vessel for sauce. You put sauce on pasta and then you eat pasta. You don't eat pasta without sauce. That would be insane. You put meats on it, you put sauce on it, and then you eat that. It's a vessel for sauce. It's a method in which to get something that tastes good into your mouth, and then... It's like rice. It's like the basis of rice, of like a meal. and then you put other things on it. It's like meat and potatoes. You have potatoes and then you pick a meat. You know? Or rice and then a form of meat and sauce. It's just meat and sauce and then your selection of pasta. Lots of people eat pasta as a side. Not without anything on it. You don't just slurp down pasta with nothing on it. That's insane. It's like eating it when it's unflavoured. Oh, I'm going to die here. I didn't realise I was dying. Did I just not land hits here? What happened? Oh, I am going to die. What the fuck? No! No! I don't have any potions. I literally don't have potions. I need to stock up. Execute! Oh!